Welcome into the Fourth and Long podcast where your championship advice comes at no price. Today is Thursday, September 1st, and it is a beautiful day here with my co host, Paul Collins. How are you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good, man. Just looking through all the news that went on the past few days, and a lot of people getting cut, a lot of people signing. Like it's a little crazy right now going on as we approach the season.
Yeah, we're gonna go over a lot of news today. That's gonna be a big portion of our episode. I know we usually just do a little touch here and there, but there was so much we figured we'd make it a significant part of it because we want to keep you guys up to date. And then we're also going to go into tips and tricks going into your week one to make sure that you're ready for the season and know what to plan for moving forward. So you're not drafted and done for the season. You know, it's a constant moving team, always in beta, is a saying we have at work, and it applies in fantasy. You know, you're always adjusting and always moving to give yourself the best chance to win the championship.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and before we start, I didn't tell him I was doing this, but I just want to give a shout out to my co-host here for putting those clips and stuff together into the YouTube. I know that we had a lot of good comments from you guys about that, and I mean, I didn't know it was happening either, and watched the video, and I think it looks significantly better and makes us look more professional. And he puts a lot of time into that, so just want to say thanks for doing that, Paul.
Hey, it's a pleasure, man. If I'm having fun doing it, and I know you're having fun too, we're just gonna keep doing it. It's just one of those things where I genuinely enjoy it. So
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of I think it's a good duo because you know how my mind goes. I think of these stupid, crazy ideas, and it's awesome to have someone
yeah,
say, "Hey, do it, make it exactly how I pictured it." I can't even imagine. I mean, it's beyond how well you do with those things. It's like it's awesome. So anyway, moving into the preseason news and hype, a couple things that came out is a bad thing is J.K. Dobbins is doubtful to start the season.
yeah, that's I mean, this was the worry, right? Going into draft season, like he just isn't like he's not rehabbing the injury as well as we thought, and now, I mean, the repercussions of this is now we get to see Mike Davis and Kenyon Drake battle for the number one spot, and I honestly going into week one, who has the clear advantage? Is it the guy that's been there all training camp and Mike Davis, or will it be Kenyon Drake, the pass catcher? I honestly don't know.
I think it'll be ugh. That's what I think it'll be.
Yeah.
Honestly, I know they had to sign a running back, and I don't know what Kenyon Drake has left. But I wasn't excited by any means. But I had the thought of you had J.K. Dobbins, you could at least pick up Mike Davis, and he's probably the starter, so you could at least get a couple weeks in there, maybe in your flesh, just to make up for the weeks J.K. won't be able to play. But this also brings the question, if your starting running back isn't going to play week one and you go sign another running back, and you still have Gus Edwards, who's supposed to be back here sometime this year. What is the status of J.K. Dobbins? I mean, he just is this week one? Is this week two? Is this week six? So it's a real scary situation. I definitely think it's an indefinite um, idea when he comes back, and it really scares me off of him.
Yeah. Uh, Anyone listening to this, if you haven't drafted yet and you're listening to this episode, please construct your roster accordingly if you're going to draft J.K. Dobbins. You cannot afford to take sketchy running backs that don't know, like if with the job security, like I talked about it, like don't draft a J.K. Dobbins and go and draft a Damian Harris. You will be frustrated starting Damian Harris week to week with J.K. Dobbins missing. Construct your roster accordingly if you are going to draft J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, honestly, in my opinion, at this point, if you're not seeing J.K. in your flex spot, I don't think he's a guy you can pick up. I
All
just
right.
I can't you can't rely on him as a RB2. And I mean that's so impactful for fantasy. And if you're relying on him to come back from injury and be successful, that's the thing. Is like even if he comes back week two, how good is he going to be? He hasn't played and hasn't had a full training camp and hasn't has come off a serious injury. A year ending injury. So you got to wonder, like, if he comes back, is he going to get 30 carries a game? No, he's going to probably get eased into the offense. So even if he comes back week two, you're not getting this stud. So
Yeah,
uh,
that's the thing too. I didn't even talk about like how long is it actually going to take for him to get up to speed? Like, I mean, you could be holding on to this guy for like a month or a month and a half into the NFL season. Like, I mean, this is just a murky situation that I don't want nothing a part of.
Yeah,
There's other guys around the round that he's going you
it's
could
just
easily take.
it's just sad because I do think he's a talented running back,
Absolutely.
and in that offense with a talented running back, I think he
Oh,
has
dude.
potential to be a top 2 round, one of the top picks in the first 2 rounds. But I mean, with the situations he's in right now, I would not be touching him unless he's in my flex. So
Absolutely.
moving on to a quick note, I don't think either of us expect to go super far into this, but Jimmy G did get re-signed, a 1 year deal for $9 million guaranteed and up to 16 million in incentives. I don't really have this impactful. I think the only thing it does is really just put a fire under Trey Lance, because I mean, you got this guy was one interception away from being a Super Bowl quarterback last year, Jimmy G. So I mean, if Trey Lance starts the season and he loses the first 4 games and is terrible, you got to ask, like, we have a Super Bowl team right now, and we have a guy that we know can do it. So I mean, if anything, I think it just says, hey, Trey, you do have to play. You do have a guy behind you that can play and take us to the Super Bowl. So,
Yeah, I think the 49ers are like one of those teams that are trying to go all in on a Super Bowl. So, I mean, and no team was bidding in on Jimmy G trade wise. They couldn't find a trade partner. So, I mean, I can understand this move just for the like a real NFL aspect, not fantasy impact. So, yeah, definitely smart for them
oh, it
heading
makes
into the
sense. It
race.
made 100. It just made sense for the 49ers. But again, I don't think it has too much of an impact. But who knows? I mean, if Jimmy G wasn't there, Trey Lance is your quarterback. But like I said, one interception away from being in the biggest game in the NFL. So,
Does this impact you at all if you're drafting Trey Lance? Like
no.
is he more so? Is he more like? Are you still confident taking him as like your QB1 in fantasy?
Yeah, yes. I mean, if I'm down for Trey Lance, I'm doing it because I believe in the player, and he's definitely the guy to start the season. So at the end of the
Yeah,
day, if he's playing bad enough that Jimmy G has an option to be in the game, then you're going to be dropping him well before that anyway. So I think
that's
if you
true.
if you start the season with Trey Lance, this should have no impact on your thoughts on him.
Yeah,
Okay. Another piece of news is Laviska Shenault of the Jaguars is now traded to the Carolina Panthers. Um,
yeah. Um,
what are your
I feel
thoughts on
like
this, Paul?
yeah, this has a potential to open up a like somebody in this offense to emerge. Like whether it'll be Marvin Jones. I mean, newly signed Christian Kirk. It's yet to be seen because with the young quarterback and Trevor Lawrence, we truly just don't know who will be that now wide receiver one. But there is Christian Kirk and Marvin Jones, and I feel like this will just open up the offense for one of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, what I think it does is give into your guy, Travis Etienne, your casket confidant, because
Yeah,
I mean, the majority of the time when a wide receiver leaves an offense, it doesn't actually, the targets don't usually get picked up by the receiver. A lot of times it's the running back. And I think people don't understand this, but I mean, it happens all the time. It happened with the Packers. It's probably, I mean, that's why I love Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon this year. And this could be another reason why I love Travis Etienne and maybe a shot at James Robinson as well. If they start putting Travis Etienne on the slot to make up some of this role, you could have a potential 2 running back backfield, not on a great offense, but I mean, what is James Robinson going in 14th round, 13th round,
yeah,
something? So, I mean, you
absolutely.
take a shot on this guy, you could potentially have a flex week to week with James Robinson. So,
Yeah, they could. I mean, I could definitely see that. Like depending on like how they feel about their wide receiver room. Kind of like how the Packers have already talked about moving Aaron Jones into the slot more and having AJ Dillon like in the backfield more. Could we see that with ETN in the slot more? We can making more receiving work. I don't know.
yeah, and I
I
mean,
mean, it's definitely worth thinking about for sure.
again, the only one that I really look at as outstanding to me is Travis Etienne, because that's why they drafted him. They drafted him in the first round not because of his running ability, because of his pass catching ability. And you just got rid of one of your young receivers. So, in my opinion, they have to believe they have the receiving core there right now with Kirk, with Marvin Jones, and now with Travis Etienne, who I kind of put in that McCaffrey type of role for the team. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. But your pick's looking better and better every day, Paul.
We can't forget that the Jacksonville Jaguars have Evan Ingram as their tight end one.
Oh gosh.
I will forget that.
Yes, we will forget because he will not do anything. He'll have 1 week with 2 touchdowns. The name will be brought back up, and he'll be back on the
Everywhere
wavelength.
ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
funny.
all right. Well, we'll just feed into your hype a little bit more here, as hard it is for me to do. But Marlon Mack is cut from the Houston Texans. So
Man, this is insane. I feel bad for people that haven't drafted yet because I'm actually kind of excited to see how high Damian Pierce moves up on draft boards. When we did our draft, I even retched on him a little bit in our draft. I took him in like the 8th round, I think. So I mean, the sky's the limit for Damian Pierce. I can't wait. I honestly can't.
I wouldn't say the sky's the limit. I would say the Houston Texans are the limit for Damian
That's a
Pierce.
good point.
I
That's a good
I
point.
I have no. I'm not disagreeing with your thought that he could be the number one running back. I think he is the number one running back. I think he's a good running back, but I also think he plays for one of the worst teams in the NFL. And I know I project them to be a little better on offense, and I actually really like the Damian Pierce pick. I mean, depending on how high he goes, you said 8th round or ninth, but honestly, after this news, I wouldn't be surprised if we end draft season with him being in that spot. I mean, people are freaking out and hyping up Damian Pierce, and for good reason. He's looked great in preseason. He's looked good enough to cut a veteran running back that has always been a good, average to above average running back in the NFL. So he's doing something right. But man, I mean,
He,
I just have a hard time trusting bad teams with running backs. So
he runs so hard, man. Like when you look at his preseason like highlights, I guess you can call it, because there wasn't much to go off of. He just runs so hard. And like out of all the running backs on this team, I'm surprised that Marlon Mack was the one to get cut. Rex Burkhead's still there. Like I feel like Marlon Mack is not as bad as what people think. And I mean, if I had to bet on who was going to get cut out of this backfield, Marlon Mack wouldn't have been my first choice.
well, I think it's just the thought of I think Marlon Mack was the 1 to 2 down guy, and Rex Burkhead is a pass catcher. So they're probably viewing as Damian Pierce as more of a early down back. So I think they're keeping Rex Burkhead as a kind of that pass catching role a little bit, and that's why I don't think it was based off the player's skill. I think it was more based off what they do for the offense. So
Yeah.
all right, moving on to Jalen Waddle is still not practicing for the Miami Dolphins, and I know there's a lot of hype around the Dolphins this year. The wide receivers, I know Chase Edmonds is rising up boards, but this is bad news for me. I mean, I know Tua played with him last year, and they already have a rapport. But you're getting Tyreek Hill, who's a top five, maybe top three wide receiver in the NFL, come to your team, and you're not out there with the reps both on the field. I think the more Tua sees how good Tyreek is at football, the less Jalen Waddle sees the football. So I mean, I'm not going to overreact. If you like Jalen Waddle and you had the thoughts on him, I don't think this has the hugest impact. But still, I mean, it's never good not to be on the field when you're competing for targets with one of the best receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, and like I mean, people that are still drafting, I mean, you may look to like kind of fade Waddle, like just the idea of like don't draft hurt players going into the draft or going into the regular season. Um, you may look at some other option. You may look at like a Michael Pittman or a Deontay Johnson or like a DJ Moore or Cortland Sutton. I think I'd rather have like almost all those guys over Waddle right now, and that injury just solidifies it even more for me.
I don't see I again he's going super high as if he's doing what he's doing last season. I just have a hard time seeing how this happens. Like he's getting Tyreek Hill, a top five guy. You have Tua, who I don't believe to be a great quarterback. I think he's an average quarterback at most in the NFL. And you're putting him on an offense that is looking to start a run first system, and Mike McDaniel's coming from the 49ers. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't understand where the targets and the value is going to come. And maybe I'm not seeing it because I look back at some of his statistics last year, and he was actually awesome as a rookie. I mean, he was getting eight catches a game, So, but again, I just have to feel like that those amount of targets and receptions are going to go down with the arrival of Tyreek Hill. So, I mean,
Yeah. Just looking at some of the guys behind him, it really doesn't make sense. Like I'm looking at the rankings on Sleeper, like Allen Robinson is ranked to Nick like 2 rounds behind him. I mean, I'm taking Allen Robinson over him, like number two wide receiver in the Rams offense, and like I said, Mike Williams. Cortland Sutton. Like I'm
taking
just taking
all
all
yeah.
those guys,
These are
taking all
wide
those guys
receiver
over.
ones. These are wide receiver ones on good offenses that are getting drafted after him.
Yeah,
I just
I just don't see the hype that high. He's going in like the fourth or fifth round. I just don't see it.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So there was a good recap on your news. I hope we kept you up to date and gave you some of our thoughts of what's happening in the preseason, how it's going to affect your season to start. There was a lot of information today, which is good. I mean, you expect that going in the next 2 weeks of the season. It's where all the rosters are getting constructed, the cuts are starting to happen, and there's always movement around this time. So it's always good to get people caught up. And
Absolutely.
that being said, we will move to our week one tips and tricks. If Paul, do you want to start us off with your first tip for week going into week one?
Yeah, so like this is more like like a defensive like draft strategy. So basically my like strategy is I typically always look for the defenses that have the good matchups early on, not necessarily even if they're the best defense. Like for example, a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're always going to be a top-rated defense. Their defense is really good. But if we look actually at their first few weeks, week 1 at Dallas, Dallas is a high powered offense. Week 2 at New Orleans, divisional game. New Orleans always plays Brady tough. Week 3, home against Green Bay. I mean, I'm not starting a defense versus Aaron Rodgers. And then week 4, home against the Kansas City Chiefs. I feel like those are weeks you can't start the Tampa Bay Bucks defense. But like if you go and look at like another option that I went with in our draft in the fourth and long league, the Denver Broncos. The Broncos play at Seattle week 1 and then home against Houston. I will take that all day over a team like the Bucks. Two more defenses that I really like. The 49ers, they play at Chicago week 1 and then home against Seattle. The Indianapolis Colts at Houston, at Jacksonville. My point is, don't look at the name value of the defense and say, "Oh, well, they have a good defense. I'm going to draft them." Look a little bit deeper, find a defense that has better matchups, and hey, look to stash a defense for another week if you see that they play a low-powered offense that'll get you more fantasy points.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the misconception with the defense is people are always trying to find that Chicago Bears Khalil Mack era, that Von
Yeah,
Miller Broncos era, where there are actual defenses you start every week and you don't take them out. The issue is none of these guys were the number one defense going into the season. So you don't
never.
so it's never who you believe. There's always a standout that goes out and kills it. And you're trying to predict that is impossible with defenses. So it's like,
Yeah,
don't try to predict that. You know what you can predict? That Seattle offense is going to be terrible. You can predict
yep,
that Chicago Bears offense is not going to be great. You
it's
know, so
not. No.
so you want to take the defenses that are good defenses that you know will be strong and that they're playing these bad offenses. So I think it's a great
Yeah, and,
tip going into your week one to look for.
and we talked about it before a couple episodes ago, like DeAndre Hopkins. Like having a guy like DeAndre Hopkins on your roster could affect us. You're holding on to a guy all year, and I mean, you can't have the bench spots.
You know,
I know
you
you love bench spots.
Yeah, and that's why. I mean, I know it sounds stupid when you say it. It's like
Yeah,
bench spots. Who cares? It's waiver wire guys. I always hear all the time. Why not draft the defense? I don't care about these guys anyway. I don't need these dudes. And I think that leads into my next point, which is what I'm saying is don't hold handcuffs and like old busted players on your bench. If it's 10th
yep,
round or later, don't go out and get like the backup running back or a guy that's going to get 10 carries a game. And your thoughts are, oh, well, if I don't have anyone to start, I can put in my flex and he might give me 7 points. That's not how you win a league. How you win a league in fantasy and football are so random and so unpredictable that your best chance is to take 10 guys that have upside and the ability to be wide receiver ones and twos versus 5 guys with abilities to be wide receiver ones and twos, relying on them in your top rounds and then taking a guy late that could just sit in your flex one week. So nothing's guaranteed. Your Aaron Jones pick in the second round, whoever takes him, is not guaranteed. He could get injured. He could be bad. AJ Dillon could take over the offense. Stuff like that. There's no guarantees in football. So your best chance of having the best roster in fantasy is to take 10 guys with upside that have an ability to finish in the top 5 rounds. And to do this is when you're late in your drafts. You take the guys like Nico Collins. You know, you take our sleepers that we spoke about before, rather than taking, I don't know, taking Naeem Hines from the Colts, who I don't care if Jonathan Taylor goes down. They'll find another running back to get carries in that offense, and he might have some value, but he's not going over the flex. Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase goes down. T. Higgins is the number one. T. Higgins goes down. Jamar Chase is the number one. He's still going to be the PPR slot guy that gets you 10 points a game. I just feel like these guys, I don't see their value in fantasy. I want guys that can win me a championship. I don't play fantasy for fourth place or third place. I play fantasy for first place. So,
Yeah. You literally took the player I was gonna say. Tyler Boyd. Like I'm looking at the wide receivers going around him. Why draft a guy like Tyler Boyd when you could throw a dart on like a George Pickens or like a Kadarius Toney? Like I feel like you know what you're getting out of Tyler Boyd. We don't know the upside of George Pickens or like a Kadarius Toney. Like why take an older guy on a roster that you know has no upside, like a guy like AJ Green even. Like I don't want AJ Green on my team. Who I want the upside in George Pickens or a Kadarius Toney.
yeah.
Like those are the guys that I want late, or a Marquez Valdez Scantling,
The
just
guy
to
that
see how the situation is.
the guy that's dropping, and it's going to pain me to say this, it's going to pain me, but the guy that I've seen dropping in a lot of drafts that I'm starting to think is dropping too much is Darnell Mooney. And the reason why I say that is because I mean, listen, I don't think the Bears are going to have a good offense. I don't believe this. But late in your draft, if he's sitting there and you have a young second year quarterback that had to play with Matt Nagy, if there's any chance in the world that it was all Matt Nagy and Justin Fields is the talent that he got drafted to be, and you have Darnell Mooney, who's the certified number one wide receiver on that offense, if Fields takes off, I mean, you could be getting a guy that is a top 3 or 4 round talent. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying these are the guys that you want to stack your roster and your bench with that hope that just one of them hits and you're a league winner. That's how that plays out. So
Yeah, just let like, I mean, even like a guy that's going a little bit earlier, like Cordell Patterson. Like I just don't want Cordell Patterson. Like going around him is like Kareem Hunt, Tony Pollard. Like I'm taking an upside on Tony Pollard over a guy like Cordell Patterson. I just am.
I
I
don't
want the
like
guys
yeah
that have potential that will be in my weekly starting lineup every week.
I don't like guys that you can go into the season saying I know that player isn't going to return me the same value as he did last season.
Yep.
That's Cordell Patterson. He might be okay. He might be okay to start, but there is no way that he is getting the amount of carries and the amount of touches, dump offs and stuff that came from Matt Ryan with Marcus Mariota. It's just he's
Yep.
not returning the same value. It's going to be a worse offense with a less likely pass catching. Pass running back, throwing quarterback. Sorry, that was a mouthful for me, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think we hit the nail on the head there. Just
mhm.
draft guys that have league winning upside. Stop settling for these guys that are just old and wrinkly.
Because you're always going to say, ugh, even if you have to start them, it never feels
Yeah,
good. You're just like,
never.
oh, take guys that are, week one can go out and kill it. And guess what? If they don't kill it and you're wrong about them, drop them, pick up 3 other guys and
Yeah,
keep taking the chances until you find the guy. But if you have, it's so hard to drop I'm going to say it, but I guess Melvin Gordon's a bad example because if Javonte Williams went down, he has some serious upside. So that
yeah,
is a bad example. But it's tough to drop the Naeem Hines when you have Jonathan Taylor because you're like, oh, even if he went down, I know I could start on my flex or something. It's like
yeah.
it's a hard decision to make, but man, it's ugly when you have to start him either way. It feels a lot better to have a young guy that can win you your league. So
If you're new to fantasy, every week there's going to be waiver wire ads, and you're not going to want to hold these guys. You're going to want to pick up the fresh waiver wire ads. You'll see as the season goes on. Just don't do it to yourself. Don't take these older guys. Take upside.
absolutely. All right, Paul, you want to go into your third tip?
But basically, my tip is just play your studs, even in tougher matchups. Don't overthink things just based on if he has a tough matchup and like, oh well, my fourth running back on my bench is playing the Jets this week, and the Jets are like the 32 ranked offense. You always want to sit and play your studs. Play the players that you drafted on your team to start. Don't overthink it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what was the example I gave? If you drafted Gabe Davis and you had
That's it. Yeah, that's
yeah,
the one I was looking for.
if you drafted Gabe Davis and you really had your thoughts on him and he plays the Rams week one. and you're like, oh, I don't want Gabe Davis as the Ram. That's a good defense. And you went and started Damian Harris or something. Like, I've done it. Don't get me wrong. I know it sounds stupid. That's the easy example. I'll give you an example of what I did last season, and I'm an idiot and got roasted by the chat, which is fine. I deserved it. But I had Justin Herbert, who was coming off a couple bad weeks, and he was playing a really good defense, and I had Justin Fields in his first week against a bad defense. And I said, I'm going to take the running quarterback in the bad defense. He got me 3 points, and I lost the week because of it. So don't overthink it. I do it. I know, especially people that get into fantasy and always want to find their sleeper and their guy, a lot of times can do it. You're like, I want to put my money where my mouth is, but sometimes it's just draft a guy that's better. Don't think about it. So
Yeah, I actually think I found that week. I just went back and looked. Um, yeah, you actually started Trey Lance. You had Justin Herbert, right? Justin Herbert had a 53 on your bench.
yeah.
53. Trey Lance had 12, right? And you ended up losing by like 12 points.
Well, here's the thing. That was another week because I also had a week where I
Oh.
started Justin Fields. So again,
This is
learning from
different.
my own mistakes. I usually don't do that with wide receivers and stuff, but for some reason with quarterbacks, I always feel like it's someone's down week and someone's up week, and I try to predict it too much. And I need to not do that with quarterbacks. That is probably my biggest flaw in fantasy. I would say is my quarterback
I'm
starts. So
we seen. I mean, like it literally, you lost the week because of it because you benched your stud. I mean, just
yeah.
start your studs.
And I think that was he had a good defense that week too. I can't remember who it was, but I remember that's why I did it. I was scared to start him, and it was just this that was the crazy game where they scored a ton of points, and I think the Chargers might end up losing that game, but
It was the Chargers versus the Browns.
that's it. Yeah.
47-42, the Chargers won. Just
Oh, they won.
absolutely
Okay.
insane. Yeah, it's absolutely insane game.
Yeah. That was a fun game. I can't wait for games like that this year. The games that it doesn't matter how good your defense is, it's just there's some momentum that's taking on that no one can stop scoring are the most fun that's why I love football. Those games are just, oh gosh, you just remember Bills Chiefs Rams a couple years ago. I mean,
Yeah,
those games are so fun to watch. So
it's just fun to always have a fancy piece in that. Just see your guy just going crazy.
you're just like, he's gonna catch another touchdown. I know it.
Yeah,
It's just,
right.
it's not a question. It's just when. That's the only question. So I will go into our last one. I'll do it pretty quickly here to wrap it up. Um, I would say just wait for potential drops and overreactions to week one. Some people, they'll do a lot of research in the offseason, find a player they like throughout the season, and just immediately crumble when they have a bad week one and think they lost and think they made a bad pick. And sometimes they'll drop them, or sometimes they'll say, get this player off my team. And it's really, I mean, you really should take advantage of this situation. Don't overreact to week one. Be the person that capitalizes on the overreactions. And this happens in both ways. If you have a player on your team that you thought was going to be okay to subpar and he has a crazy 3 touchdown game week one, try to get rid of him. If you feel like, hey, I had the prediction at the beginning of the year that this guy wasn't going to be great and he had one of those outlier games and that happened to be in the first week, take advantage of this and see if you can get some value that you weren't expecting to have with that player. So I think this is just a good tip that me and you do pretty well is the buy low and sell high idea of fantasy.
Yeah, I think I remember a time last year, you had lost by like a couple fantasy points. It was like within like 5 points. And it was Amari Cooper. Remember, you had Amari Cooper, and I remember you tilted so bad that you literally traded Amari Cooper right after the game hit. You said, "I don't want this guy on my team." That's the type of stuff you want to look for. There's a lot of emotion in fantasy, and you want to take advantage of that emotion from your league mates.
Dang, just come.
Buy low, sell high.
We should change the name of this podcast to "Every Mistake Nate's Made in the Last 8 Years." It
Yeah,
seems like I
I brought
promise I'm
up
not
every
usually this bad.
mistake. I brought up
These are
every
outlier
mistake.
situations of my life. It just seems to coming all back to bite me. But yeah, I to be fair, I made that trade saying that was 100% emotional because I made that trade and I don't do it very often. Of saying I cannot watch. He hurt me too bad this week. I cannot watch him again on my team. So
Hey, they're good examples though.
yeah,
Like regardless, like they're examples that there is a lot of emotion in fantasy football, and you need to be on the side to take advantage of that.
yep. Absolutely. I think uh, that's what good fantasy managers do is they do these little things. They don't hold handcuffs. They hold breakout players. They find your defense early. Those couple points, you never know when it's going to win you a week. They play their studs no matter what, and then they take advantage of buy low opportunities. So um,
Yeah,
I think
especially if you play in a league that doesn't have nerf defenses, that's a crucial important.
yeah,
You always want to play the good matchup.
yeah,
Like we play
we
in a nerf defense league, but normal ESPN leagues, you want that advantage.
yeah, ours isn't a series, but we still do it for the couple points, but it's just because
Yeah,
it's because why not do it? That's the thing. Is like we do it because
yeah,
there's no reason not to. If I have a better defense, I'm going to take advantage of it. So just to get that cut.
absolutely.
So lastly, we'll end with something we're going to try to do every time there is a trade. I think we'll try to address all of them. It was a trade from Logan Meyer in our league to Kevin LaGrange. He traded Devin Singletary, Logan did, and received Daryl Henderson. And get your thoughts on this. I know you know my thoughts based off the values pick, but how about you, Paul?
Yeah, this trade actually happened. We were like literally in the middle of the recording the episode, last episode. And I think the higher upside player in this trade is obviously Daryl Henderson. Right now, we got Cam Akers not practicing or he's like limited. So we could see an extended role for Daryl Henderson, and just Devin Singletary. I want nothing to do with Devin Singletary. I think it's a matter of time before James Cook steps in and just takes over this backfield. And Daryl Henderson's one of those guys that I'm just not even trying to draft, even if it's like double digit rounds. I just don't want the guy on my team.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things, man, where Zach Moss is now like the thing about Devin Singletary was James Cook came in and the whole offseason hype was that it's going to be Devin Singletary and James Cook. Zach Moss was thinking about getting cut. That's what some people were saying. But now all reports say that Zach Moss is starting to get more involved back in the offense. And you got to ask, is it James Cook or Devin Singletary? Or is it that they want a three running back system? Either way, I don't like Devin Singletary in this situation. Any of those
Right.
scenarios that play out, it's never good when a third running back comes involved with a team that barely runs the ball. So it's just, I mean, they drafted James Cook to be a pass catcher. He's definitely going to see some of that role. I mean, even though he's the running back too. So it's just, yeah, I don't like Devin Singletary this year. You know my thoughts of Daryl Henderson. I think he will have instant value week one and a potential to be a top not top five, top 25 guy at running back. Excuse me, but
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen Devin Singletary. He's had an opportunity to take over this backfield. He did last year, and he just didn't do it. Like, he's just not good. I just don't think he's good at football.
I mean
He had a chance last year, and he just didn't take it.
makes you think what the Bills think. They just went out and drafted a fairly high draft capital running back. So I mean, they're
Yeah.
obviously not happy with the running back room if you do something like that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
other than that, I think that is it for us today in the podcast. I hope you can take these tips and tricks going into your season and use it to win your championship. And as always, this is the Fourth and Long podcast where your championship advice came at no price. And have a good day.
Have a good one, guys.